Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome to Conscientious Omnivore. My name is Pal. Today, I have a guest here with me. We're going to do a live debate, although I think it'll be a discussion more than anything, hopefully. And I'm happy to have him here. His name is Carnival, so check out his channel. I've linked it in the description as well. And yeah, maybe just if anybody's watching this from your fans, basically my channel is really related to veganism and kind of like gardening. That's really kind of like my big thing is like gardening, polyculture, permaculture, back to Eden kind of stuff. And I talk about veganism, like ethics and health and that kind of thing. And then I just do some debates every once in a while. So that's my channel in a nutshell. And Carnival, if you want to introduce yourself.
Well, long story short, I'm just a goat farmer in Ecuador, and my wife and I have had to deal with some vegans in real life as well as online, and I guess that's kind of spurred me to start talking about veganism and the nonsense that it is, in my opinion, as well as some other things. I'm interested in a lot more than just diet or animal husbandry. You know, I was just in my garden, but I guess that's why I'm here. So I'm gonna focus on that. It's because I just, I've been in the cyberspace listening to vegans, checking out vegan channels, and no one has made a logical argument for why veganism. And when I talk about veganism, I'm not talking about somebody's diet. I'm talking about the ideology that presupposes that the whole world shouldn't eat animal products. So I just want to make that clear. And I won't keep repeating hashtag not all, but when I say vegans, obviously I'm not talking about everybody, but just that specific ethical vegan who likes to, as I often put it, likes to virtue signal and tell everybody how great they are and how everybody else that's not like them sucks. So that's long story short, that's basically my position in this discussion.
Okay, cool. I think with that said, though, I'd like to jump into that topic right away because I think that's kind of an easy one to get out of the way first is this idea of just I'm vegan and therefore everybody else sucks if you're not vegan. That's definitely not my position. I don't think that's helpful. I think also most people that I know that are vegan were not born vegan, so they weren't raised vegan. They probably came to it at some later stage in life. I definitely came to it pretty late in life. So I'm 40 now, and I'm going to be turning my third vegan anniversary this fall. So, you figure for 37 years of my life, I've been, an omnivore and eating everything. So for me to go and then basically tell everybody else that they're, bad or immoral or whatever for doing the same thing that I did for most of my life, I don't think that's going to be helpful, even if, that might work for a few people to try to change their mind. But yeah, that's not my approach. So I don't
Yeah,
think we're going to have to argue about that.
uh-huh. No, I actually, the reason why I'm here is because I kind of got the sense that you're a more open-minded person and not militant, so to speak. Someone that's probably easier to have a conversation with rather than just have a spitting contest, quote unquote, debate. So that's a big reason why I'm here. And I also wanted to ask you what that meant exactly because I haven't seen all of your videos, just a few. Conscientious omnivore, what that means exactly. Like, well,
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
I'll just let you tell me.
Yeah, so that actually kind of came about from when I first kind of looked into trying a vegan diet. So, long story short, my son, when he was around 2 years old, he basically stopped eating meat, and it was very difficult because at that time I really thought like you needed to eat meat for health. So my wife and I were very concerned that he would have some kind of deficiencies or just be lacking in some nutrients or whatever. So I was starting to do all this research about kind of like what kind of problems he might have or what have you. And we tried everything. I mean, we would like blend stuff up or put things in soups and all this kind of crazy stuff. And he just like knew if something had meat in it, he just refused to eat it. He would spit it out. And I don't know if it was the taste or the smell or texture, who knows? Like, I don't really know. And he couldn't really communicate yet with us. So it was kind of difficult. And that kind of went on for like a year, where, we were concerned, but like all the while, like, he was getting regular checkups and everything, and he was growing super well. Like he's, in like the 90 percentile growth charts, everything. So like everything was fine, totally healthy. And that kind of like helped reassure us a little bit to make sure that he was okay. And then I kind of started looking into things more and more, and I was like watching a lot of things about like health and just basically like fitness. And I had already kind of heard like years back, like from some friends of mine, about people who were vegan, and I'm into like ultra running, and I knew about Scott Jurek, and he's been a long time vegan and just an amazing athlete. And then I kind of started looking at other people who are athletes and are vegan, and they kind of started getting into my head of like, like maybe you can be vegan and be healthy, because I was always convinced you couldn't. But so at the very beginning, when I kind of got it in my head that like, well, if you can be healthy vegan, and you don't need to eat animals, then why do we eat them? And I got it in my mind that like, yeah, that's pretty messed up what we do to animals. If we don't need to do it, if we're just doing it because it tastes good or it's convenient or it's cheap or culture or whatever reason people have, if you don't need to do it, then you're ultimately taking the life of another being for just because it's tasty. And that's kind of what I got to. And at first, I didn't even think I was really going to be a vegan, like an ethical vegan or anything. It was just more like I started getting into like the ethical argument against factory farming specifically. And in my mind, I thought like, well, at some point I want to get land and I want to be able to like farm and do my own kind of like food production. And I was convinced that at that point that I would probably still like have like some like chickens and goats and stuff like that, and that I would just not eat like animal products until then. So it was in my mind this kind of like almost like a temporary thing of like until I can do it ethically, until I can be like conscientious about the way I do it, and then it's not factory farmed. So I think it started from there, but then very quickly, I tried it for like in my mind, I was like going to try like a vegan diet for 3 months and just see how I feel. And if it was going to be okay, then, I'd be like okay with my son not eating meat and that kind of thing. And then I started, and after about like, 3-4 weeks, I just realized like, wow, I feel amazing. Like there's just no downside to it. And then I just started doing more and more research into the health benefits of avoiding animal product consumption. And that's when I kind of made more of an ethical connection that like, yeah, I don't even, even if I had a beautiful farm and what have you, I still would never want to keep animals to kill them and eat them, because it's just completely unnecessary. So that's the backstory. I think you're on mute. I don't know if you're speaking or.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry about
yeah,
that.
no worries.
What I wanted to say about that is that even though garden environment can be artificial, at least in some way, shape, or form, I think we know that the so-called circle of life, Mother Nature, um, there is definitely a certain level of, well, a very obvious level of coexistence between plants and animals, and uh, they coexist together, and it's a self-contained ecosystem. Obviously, we've intervened in all that, and yes, like I say, you can have an artificial garden or a garden that strays away from this natural cycle. But how do you personally, out of curiosity, how do you rectify this problem? And I'm talking obviously about fertilizer or keeping your soil fertile without any input from animals. How do you do that?
Mhm. There's actually a couple of different ways you can do it. I mean, one is obviously like heavy composting, so returning all the vegetable matter that you can in the form of kitchen scraps and stuff like that. So that's one thing. You can also do things like with mulching. So a lot of places in the developed world, like people actually throw away their yard waste, and it gets collected and taken away from the side of the road. And if you basically use that either in the form of leaves or like ground up, wood chips, that can actually be a wonderful kind of replacement of any of the nutrients that you're taking out of the soil. But I do realize what you're saying. So there is that is somewhat artificial, because like right now I'm in the process of kind of setting up gardens. This is the first year I've really set up back to Eden. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but they basically use like
Yeah,
heavy wood chip. Yeah. So like
yeah, I know
I've set
what
up
it is.
I've set up two vegetable beds like that, and I realize what you're saying. Like that's still an external input, because like I'm taking it from other people's like houses where they're putting it out by the curb, and then I bring it to my yard. So the other kind of way you can look at it is
Right.
you can use fertilizer from human manure, or you could still use it from animals, but not kill the animals. So even if you needed the fertility and you needed it from an animal source, you could view the human manure as a source of fertilizer. I know there are some special considerations like with like hot composting and all this kind of stuff to make sure that it doesn't have unhealthy bacteria or what have you. But it totally works. I mean, there's still a lot more research I need to do about it, but I know of several people who use human manure successfully online. There's many videos and instructions about it. There's several books about it.
We
So
do.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. We have a composting toilet. Now, but so you're basically bringing in biomass from somewhere else, and that biomass was created using animals.
Well, I mean, would you consider a fruit tree being biomass created by like animals? I mean,
Well, this is, yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. Like, for example, like you're saying scraps from other people's, kitchen or what have you. Those scraps were likely created using animal manure or rotting animal carcasses or whatever animal died and rotted in the ground. I just have a hard time seeing how, if this sort of thing, what you're doing, were to happen on a grand scale, I don't understand how you could gain enough biomass to keep the circle of life going without the animal input, unless Monsanto intimately involved in your life. I don't see
yeah,
how you could do
no,
that
no,
without chemicals.
I'm totally against like artificial fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides and all that stuff. So, I mean, the thing is that this is kind of like a common misconception. If you look into like animal agriculture, the everyone thinks like what would happen if you got rid of animal agriculture, like you wouldn't have enough manure. The manure that is produced by animal agriculture, the problem isn't that there isn't enough of it. The problem is that there's too much of it. So that's what's causing all the dead zones in the waterways and all this kind of stuff, is that there's too much manure. They can't actually even use it all. So, what ends up happening is that it gets piled into these big like lakes, and there's just like feces and urine and everything kind of like, soaking. And then when you have a breach of this stuff, it like flows into waterways. It kills all the fish and creates these huge algae blooms and all this kind of stuff. So the problem is not that you don't have enough. You could certainly just have like animals on a farm, even wild animals, producing enough, fertilization. You absolutely don't need so much fertilizer that you would require the number of farm animals that we keep for ultimately for killing and eating.
Okay, well, that argument is a factory farm argument, and I'm with you there. So I don't think we need to necessarily go back, even though it's
You broke up there. Can you just repeat what you said?
that's the argument that you just made about the factory farm. That's an argument against factory farming. That's not actually a pro-vegan argument. I just want to make that distinction because I think a lot of vegans uh, make that mistake. Like, for example, if it's kind of like someone making an argument against people having sex because sometimes college students get drunk and there's, weird encounters that where there's this gray area of consent or non-consent. You know what I mean? So it's like this extreme argument that's it's a non sequitur basically because I'm not pro factory farm at all, but that's not exactly a pro vegan argument. I think that gets missed a lot by vegans, and it gets used a lot to keep people who have homesteads. They use the factory farm to basically go after people who raise happy and healthy animals that don't go through any of that. And another thing about what you were saying, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
What you were saying about animal manure, we're back at Monsanto again. The reason why animal manure doesn't get used is because part of it is actually with all kinds of crap that food produces a lot of you wouldn't want that in their soil. But then again, maybe not, because what they actually do is they're able to procure chemical fertilizers that are cheaper than animal manure, so the demand isn't really there. That stuff could very well be used, and it would make sense to use, but it doesn't make dollars, which is why people grow these huge these huge corporations do most of the food in this world. They don't go the animal manure route because the chemical fertilizer is cheaper. So that, yeah, while I understand that's a problem, that's not what should be used. Would be a better form of, even despite that chemicals, it would still be a better way of fertilizing fields than all chemicals there are. Then again, you have run of killing wildlife, right? Um, well, for you,
I'm having a lot of trouble getting. There's a lot of distortion in the line or something. Like I think I'm getting most of what you're saying, but it's really kind of like bad quality. I'm not sure if it's like your internet connection or something.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's roboting pretty bad.
Still?
Right now it seems better. Try talking again.
Yeah. Hello, 1 2 1 2.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that even if they were to take new that has, antibiotics and all this other stuff, I wouldn't want it on my farm, but it would still be better to use that than all the chemical fertilizers, because at the very least you would eliminate that source of pollution, and you would found, and microbes process it as much as possible, and that would still be used, right? And you would need fertilizers that are also killing wildlife and polluting. You have two sources of pollution that could be turned into less than one, I would say, because, but the problem isn't that it's the factory farm is the problem in this instance, even though I don't agree with that way of animal husbandry. It's the fact that these companies like Monsanto, they're able to create chemical fertilizers that are actually cheaper than, doing all that shit and distributing it over the fields, even though that it is still technically a better source of fertilizer, despite the fact that it has chemicals in it. So I hope this makes sense. You could actually, if you were to use manure from the factory farm, the reason why they don't is because chemicals are cheaper. So that creates problems. Animal agriculture polluting, and we'll call it even, or omnivorous, whatever you want to call it, monoculture, plant agriculture polluting as well. So it's it's not as simple as you present it. And again, the reason why that manure isn't being used is because Monsanto has made their chemical fertilizer cheaper. That's why that manure pollutes. So this is, a lot of these vegan.
I would definitely, agree with you that Monsanto and all these kind of chemical companies are certainly not good. They're not good for the health of people. They're not good for the health of animals. They're not good for the environment. So, we're in 100% agreement there. I still would argue though that the problem again with the fertilizer is not that it's like too expensive compared to the price of these chemicals. It's just simply that there's too much of it. They're able to basically sell it as a waste product. I mean, it literally is a waste product of the animals, but it's also a waste product of the industry. If you look at things like bone char or things like that, they're able to make money off of the waste products. So when you slaughter animals, you have their bones left over. They're able to like create bone char, and then they can use those as like refining agents and all this kind of stuff. You would never like kill and raise animals just to make the bone char. It's a byproduct. The manure is a byproduct. They're able to sell it for relatively cheap. The costs that are in there are really just that it's concentrated in one place, and you still have to distribute it. So,
But you do realize that most monocultures in the developed world use chemical fertilizers.
Yes, and
they don't use manure.
And I'm against that. And
so how can you? So I don't understand how you can make the argument that it's too much theoretically, when we would have to see, right? We would have to take that manure and spread it all over fields instead of using chemicals. If we eliminate all the chemicals, you can't really say that this would be still too much, because we haven't done this. So that's, you're presupposing something here, and I'm gonna have to push back on that because we just don't know. And if you actually look at nature, I mean, whatever comes out of the ground gets put back into the ground. Nature doesn't have a problem. They're decomposing animals, their bones or what have you, or the manure from all kinds of animals. Nature has never had this problem. So I don't know why this would be a problem right now. I think it's a problem of economics and distribution. I think it's a
Yeah, yeah,
problem.
absolutely. Well, I mean, we're in agreement there because what you have is you have these totally unnatural like situations where you have like hundreds and thousands or hundreds of thousands of animals in very confined, very small spaces, and that's why it's completely unnatural. Like you have just the concentration of the manure is a huge problem. So that's why you have all these health concerns, like in places like in North Carolina in the U.S. and other poor areas where they're literally spraying it into the air, and it's like causing like all sorts of asthma and like lung cancer and all this crazy stuff because it's just too concentrated, and it's causing these big problems. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like I don't, and to be fair, like I don't even really know. Do you have the price per like bag of fertilizer versus the bag of like artificial fertilizer? I mean, I don't have that in front of me. Like we could look that up, but I
No,
suspect
I
that
just remember.
they're somewhat comparable.
mm,
I can't imagine that there's that much of a difference in the price.
Well, but here's the difference. A bag of cow manure is not going to have the same amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and whatever else you need that a bag of just simply those minerals, right? Because there's going to be
Okay,
plant
fair enough.
matter, there's going to be
Yeah, I got
humus. So you can't really compare them pound by pound. And this is what actually makes chemical fertilizers that much more efficient because one bag of chemical fertilizer could have potentially even a truckload of cow manure. You know what I mean? So this is the problem. It's really not. Um, and I understand what you're saying because it is so concentrated that also makes it more difficult to distribute it. Because let's say somebody has a farm that has cattle and then they also have a cornfield, it's a lot easier for them to just move that shit over to the next field and fertilize it like that, which is what happens where I live. But this is the funny thing. People here, because of the price, people here will drive 60 kilometers to get chemical fertilizer and come to my farm and buy goat manure from me, which is, just a lot. Actually, because it makes a lot more sense economically for them. I see this in real life, the chemical, uh, these corporations that produce these chemical fertilizers, they're really the problem in creating this cow manure problem, or they're definitely a big part of this problem.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So, I mean,
as
to
far as
this, I would
price
say,
comparison.
again, just like you said before, that it's not an argument for veganism. I would say that this is not an argument against veganism, but it often gets tried to be like used as one. In that, like, yeah, the monoculture is producing corn or wheat or whatever things that people complain about vegans eating. Like, you have to realize that most of the people are in the world are eating those as well. There's very few people who don't eat those things, and even people sometimes when they're following like like a carnivore diet is very fad right now. It's very popular, and even people who are eating that, if they're eating like commercially grown meat, they're basically still contributing to that same problem of the monoculture because the animals are being fed those grains and corn and soy and everything else. So it's not an argument against veganism in the slightest because all the other people are eating this too, and I'm against that as well. So I mean, I think what we need is a return to like small scale solutions, backyard gardens, and small scale hand picked kind of like solutions. I really think ultimately that's the solution.
Okay, well, I would like to say that I don't argue against veganism. I just reject it because veganism to me has not made any logical arguments. So I don't have to argue against it. I just reject it on the basis of the fact that it doesn't, there's no logic behind it. Now, as far as uh, animals being fed grain, this is another part of this vegan dogma that is just bullshit because obviously they are. I'm not trying to say that. There are grains that are grown to feed animals specifically, whether cat or your dog or that cow on the farm. However, more than 50% of corn in America, which is the biggest corn producer in the world by far, is actually goes to ethanol, which is a biofuel, right? Then there's a portion of that corn that goes into vegetable oil production, and the byproduct of that is put in animal feed. And then there's also a significant portion of, and this is the same when it comes to soy, canola, corn. I'm just using corn as an example, but the majority of the grain, if you will, at least as far as corn and canola and soy, that goes into producing biofuels. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, a whole bunch of it goes into producing vegetable oil, a significant portion. You need something like 75 pounds of corn to produce 1 liter of vegetable oil. And then there's also obviously human consumption, because corn syrup is in everything. So it's a huge misconception to say that the majority of corn is grown for animals. That's not true. What the animals eat generally is the byproduct of all these other much more profitable industries, which is why meat in America is still relatively inexpensive, because A, corn is subsidized, and B, even though some of that corn is specifically, I want to make that clear, is specifically grown for the animal, it's actually what's put in animal feed is the byproduct of all these other bigger, more profitable industries. So if you drive a car, you're consuming corn. If you eat any of these food products that have corn syrup in them, you're consuming corn. If you're cooking with vegetable oil, you're consuming corn. If you're painting your house with oil-based paint, you're using corn. I mean, when I say corn, vegetable oil, that's not just the food industry. That's a huge, chemical industry that uses corn for a whole sorts of things that most vegans have even no idea of.
Yeah.
At all. And another thing about this sort of grain that's grown for animals, and that's a terrible diet for an animal to be on. I wouldn't want to eat grain-fed meat, and I don't recommend it. But it's the quality of the corn or soy or whatever that's grown for these animals is not easily digestible for human beings. It's feed quality corn, so it grows in great quantity. It's likely been genetically modified to be that way, but it's not very digestible to us either. So it's not the corn on the cob that you get at the supermarket. And in reality, most of it goes to all these other industries, and most of what animals get is actually a byproduct of something else. So that's a huge misconception that used as a pro-vegan argument, when in reality, vegans probably actually consume more of the grain than people who eat strictly meat, and specific and even if they eat grain-fed meat. And another thing
No,
I
sorry, I'm
wanted to
gonna have
say
to
about
stop you
that,
there because that's just completely false. There,
what's false?
the fact that like somebody who's consuming the grains directly is consuming more of them than the person who's consuming just animal products. The animal products, just by the rate of the conversion, I mean, it's anywhere from like 6 to maybe sometimes more like times the amount of grains and plants that has to go in to produce the same amount of like calories or weight or whatever you want to count, like protein from the animal. So if you're eating just the grain fed cow or whatever, you're definitely consuming more. Like it doesn't matter which way you look at it, per calorie, per weight, per protein, grams of protein, whatever, than if you would just be eating the same amount of plants yourself. It's like on the order of
So
like
you're saying
6 times or more.
is corn nutritionally complete?
Is beef, cow meat nutritionally complete?
Absolutely, it's complete nutrition.
You're getting vitamin C from meat?
Absolutely.
No, you're not.
Absolutely. Yes, you
No,
are.
no, you're not. That's incorrect. If you
Liver.
eat nothing but meat,
You're talking about muscle meat. The cow is liver. There's cow heart. Cow is a whole bunch of organs. Cow produces milk. This is why veganism gets it wrong, because they
yeah. Let
just
me
they
let
just
me tell you about
compare.
that though. Here's the thing, right? So like I've debated Milk Jar before, and he was going on about this as well. I tried to ask him how many times a week is he eating cow liver, and I did the math. If you look at, because he was saying that he could just eat like 1 or 2 cows a year and get all his calories and get all his nutrients. And you're certainly, if you're only eating 2, even if you eat the whole thing, like just the whole liver from a cow, 2 in a year is not going to give you enough vitamin C. So if you're eating more than that, like, you're obviously going to be needing more than two cows. Now, we talked about this in that debate as well, but like, just look at the environmental footprint of needing, more than two cows just for one person. That's an insane amount of land. Like, even low estimates is probably like at least like 2 to 4 acres of land required for one of those situations. On that amount of land, you could grow so many different kinds of vegetables that are nutritionally complete, that you'd be able to feed, like, 10 times over the number of people on the same land.
Okay, but you just moved the goalpost because we were talking about comparing corn to muscle meat, or to cows in general. And what I was
Well,
also
but
going
you're
to say,
saying is you asked me if corn was nutritionally complete, and so I just told you, the same question. The cow meat is not nutritionally complete. And my idea isn't that somebody would just be eating corn. Like, I don't think that would be a healthy
well,
diet.
okay, if if you want to say it's not nutritionally complete, which I completely reject, but let's just assume that for the time being, you still have to concede that animal from head to toe, milk included, the cow is a lot more nutritionally complete than corn, right? I mean, corn is so deficient when it comes to protein, and yet the cow is able to convert this very poor, by comparison, source of nutrition, into complete protein, zinc, all kinds of minerals and vitamins. And this is another thing that vegans never talk about. They just want to compare muscle meat to corn, which is, I mean, I challenge anybody to try to live on the corn that cows live versus living on meat. And I guarantee you, you're going to live a much better, healthier, happier life, even using eating grain-fed muscle meat and nothing else than just the corn. So it's a completely flawed argument. But here's another thing, what
Sorry,
that people don't
before we
talk
move
about.
on, I just want to say though that you you're kind of like incorrect when you said a complete protein. All plants have all the essential amino acids you need. They are essentially all complete proteins. They have varying amounts of these amino acids, so their profile is not like one to one across all the amino acids like in animal products. So meat will have what is considered to be a complete profile just because all of the ratios are like pretty much one to one. But this is like a long debunked argument. Like, all plants have all the essential amino acids you need. People have lived off of just potatoes, for example, like for a year and a half or whatever, a year, and not had any problem. No nutritional deficiencies. This is just a fallacy.
Well, you just moved the goalpost because you're adding tomatoes when we're just talking about corn so far. So,
No, I said
uh,
potatoes. Sorry, but anyway, that's not the point. My point is that you said that plants are not a complete protein. They
I said
are.
corn isn't. No, I said corn isn't
Okay,
because
but
we're talking.
corn is a complete protein as well. All plants are. That's what I'm saying. It's not just corn. Corn is a complete protein, as well as potatoes, as well as tomatoes, as well as bananas, as well as any other type of plant food that we eat.
Corn is a complete protein.
Yes, they have all
Okay,
the amino acids
this
you
is
need.
right. But from livestrong.com, corn does have all of, I'm quoting, reading, does have all of the essential amino acids, but it is considered a low quality protein and incomplete protein. So even though, yeah, it probably has traces of these amino acids, it's not enough to build protein in our body. So I reject the argument that corn is as nutritionally complete as meat. And again, I issue a challenge to anybody to eat just corn versus just meat. And I think we all know what's going to happen. But another thing that
Well,
I'm
but
trying to
before
hammer.
you go on, let me respond to that. I mean, I don't see too many vegans suggesting that you should just eat corn. So I mean,
No,
you
no, no, that
usually eat
wasn't
it
the
with other
argument.
things. No,
That's
but
not the argument.
you said you
We're
challenge
comparing
somebody to eat just corn versus just eating
because because
versus
because
just
that's
eating meat. So what if I challenge
but
you to eat just corn versus the toenails of the cow? Like, I mean, this is just an arbitrary
yeah,
thing. Like,
but no, it's not an arbitrary thing because the argument is always, let me backtrack because we were talking about this. The argument was that cows eat the grain, right? So cows consume this grain, and the argument is that, and I've heard this many times. I'm not saying that you specifically said this yourself, But the argument is that, well, why don't we just eat what the cow eats and we'll be just fine? And that's
Yeah, yeah, no,
completely bunk.
I wouldn't make. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, there is grain, and there is a difference between the feed quality. Yeah, I would agree with
I'm
that.
not
That's fine.
I'm not talking about the entirety of the vegan diet. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that the reason why the animal is so useful to us is because it converts low quality uh, protein, low quality food that wouldn't be sufficient for us into something that is a lot more complete and definitely sufficient to live a healthy life. But the problem I also have is that what in a lot of these vegan arguments gets overlooked is that that cattle also produces milk, which is nutritionally complete, as long as it's a healthy cow. It produces that. It also produces glue, gelatin for jellos. There's blood meal that fertilizes the fields. There is the potential, at least the potential of using the cow manure. There's also the leather industry, which is, something that most people definitely appreciate. So there's a lot more to the cattle industry than just the muscle meat, and I think these very general comparisons miss that completely and ignore the fact that look, these animals, they don't just produce muscle meat, they produce all kinds of stuff. And the main point is that what you input into this industry, what you feed the animal, is nowhere near as nutritionally complete as the stuff that you get out of it, which is why the cattle industry still exists. Because if it were true that you could take whatever you put on the cow's plate and put it on our plate, then why would we struggle, even creating meat when we could just bypass that whole? Vegans seem to think like you could just bypass the meat industry and everything's going to be okay when that hasn't been proven and it doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't get a complete nutritional profile from uh, a whole different variety of plants, but that has a lot of other problems that come with it. That's not without a cost, whether it's environmental or uh, you know dollar signs, basically. That's very expensive.
Yeah. So let me respond to that. One thing that you said right there, I would absolutely agree with. It's not as simple. Like I do see a lot of people make this argument that like we already produce enough food to feed the world many times over and blah blah blah. It's not as simple as just taking the grains and the corn and whatever else that we're feeding the animals. Because I agree, it's not fit for human consumption. It wouldn't be nutritionally, adequate probably, and it wouldn't be like taste wise. It's very rough and like it's a totally different type of thing. So I would agree there. That's not an argument. But my argument against that is that it's definitely something that would be able to be changed over time. If you look at people like Sepp Holzer, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He's written books about permaculture, and he has a very successful farm in Austria. Growing up in the Alps in really high altitude and cold temperatures. He has very little growing season.
Oh,
But
is that the guy with all the pond system?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah, okay.
he's really a cool guy. And if you read his books, I would definitely recommend it. He's got like some success stories where people have invited him to do like farm design in other parts of the world. And one of the projects that I remember reading about, it was done in like Scotland on very very poor quality soil, where basically it was deemed unfit for anything but just pasture land. And this is also a very common argument against veganism, that like, oh well, we're using pasture land that's only fit for grazing cows or sheep or whatever, and so you wouldn't be able to grow any vegetables there. And he's proven that to be absolutely false. He goes to this like place that's like a complete, just horrible, no topsoil. It's just like terrible quality. Basically, even the grass is having trouble growing there, and he's able to like turn that into like a super productive like vegetable heaven. And that guy's not a vegan, so it's not like vegan propaganda. He's absolutely all in favor of like small scale animal husbandry. He has like pigs and yaks and all sorts of other animals on his farms. So it's not even a question of him doing like vegan propaganda, but he's able to convert that type of infertile soil into a real growing, heaven basically. So it's
No,
absolutely
it is
possible.
possible. No,
And
I
my
know it's
argument is that,
possible.
yeah, if it is possible, like why wouldn't we strive for that? And I just want to go back to something you just said. You said that you don't argue that you could have a nutritionally complete profile as a vegan by eating a variety of plants. So if that's the case, then I would ask you then, just if you have the choice of killing an animal and not, then that's where the ethical question comes in. Like, why would you continue to kill the animal if you could do it another way?
Well, I didn't say that you could. I'm just saying that I'm not going to push back that you couldn't. I'm not going to say, I don't know you. I don't know your body. I don't know how you react to certain food. So I'm not going to tell you like what you can or cannot do. That's what I mean. But, and as far as what he did, yeah, I watched some of his videos and it's great. And let's not act like he didn't use animal input, because animals are very important to his land becoming fertile once again, especially with all the fish poop in the water that he uses to irrigate. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and he has pigs and
he
stuff too. But again, you don't have to necessarily kill and eat the fish out of your pond. You can just leave them there.
but he does.
Okay, but you don't have to.
Well, I mean, to say that he doesn't have to, that hasn't been proved, because he still does. That's what I'm saying. Theoretically, I suppose it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't, like, I know for a fact that I can't live a healthy, happy life just eating plants. I know that for a fact, and there are millions of people like me, and I'm extrapolating. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying, I presume, based on thousands of testimonials that I've seen, that there are millions of people like that out there who can't live eating just plants. They just can't. But I'm not saying that some people couldn't. I'm not telling people what to eat. I'm just saying, what gives you the right to tell other people what they cannot eat? And I'm not saying that you're necessarily saying that, but capital V veganism is. So that's what I meant when I left that comment on your video about the company you keep, because I noticed that you're different than most vegans you run into in cyberspace. And yet, you know, because you are a vegan and you are a proponent of veganism, that is the company you keep. So, what do you say to the fact that a lot of people have gotten very sick eating a vegan diet, and as soon as they got animal products back into their diet, they were well again? Like, how do you reject that fact and this evidence? I don't understand why it's so easy for a lot of vegans to just dismiss that. It doesn't
Okay,
seem very ethical.
tell me how many people get sick eating a meat-based diet.
I have never met anybody.
Like, have you seen what the leading cause of death is in the world? It's heart disease. The next one is like cancer and stroke. I mean, basically,
That's
look at
that's
the
not,
U.S.
but
Like, you look at the U.S.
what
population.
did you just say? What did you just say though? What did you just say? You made a logical leap from insinuating that it's meat killing them when you just said that it's heart disease. So what is
Okay,
it?
but
Is it heart
you know,
disease?
you know how many people are like vegan. I've seen it mentioned in your video that you're always saying it's only about 1% of the world population. So
It's
one
less than
percent of
that.
Okay, so it's less. If it's less than that, it's even worse. Like, you're making my point for me. It's a tiny percentage of the population, but like most of the world is eating animals or animal products, and like it's the number one thing that's killing people. So,
How do you
you're
know that? No, no, no,
no,
no.
no, no,
Hold
no,
on.
no,
How
no.
do you
I'm
know
not
that?
making. No, no, no. Listen, I'm not making the logical jump that you're suggesting. What I'm saying is this: most of the people in the world are eating animal products. And
Uh-huh.
the thing that's killing the most people in the world is heart disease and what have you. You don't see
Yeah.
like the what you said before was like, why are people going and having all these health problems like being vegan? So I'm saying, well, why are these other people having health problems if they're like eating animal products? Like,
Okay, so most of the world eats a very tiny proportion of their diet as animal products. Most of the world actually is mostly vegan, and that goes anywhere from 100% vegan through 70, 60, 50, 40 to, there are very few people who don't eat plants. So you're going to tell me that heart disease is, I'm assuming that you're saying that it comes from meat and animal products, when in reality most of the world eats mostly plants. So why are we blaming meat and not the plants?
well, eating plants versus eating mostly plants is not the same thing. If you look at a population of like 1940s Okinawa, Japan, they were eating 96% plants, and they were the longest lived people on the face of the earth.
No, I
They're no
completely.
longer they're
That's
no
not
longer the
true. That's not
healthiest.
true.
Uh, why
That's
is that
not
not
true.
true?
They didn't. Who says they were eating 96%
The
plants? Who says this?
the food queries that they did when the U.S. basically like controlled Japan and controlled Okinawa. They did like food surveys and analysis of what those people are eating because they wanted to know why they were so healthy. And you can find the charts that show that they had like 60% of their
Wait,
calories
how
coming
did
from
they
sweet potatoes and
look? No, this is another myth that vegans spread. I don't know about these statistics, but like Japanese, that's an island. These people eat so much fish, it's not even funny. Okinawans specifically, they eat so much pork, it's
yeah,
not
they
even
eat that
funny.
now.
So,
They eat that now. They didn't then.
uh-huh.
And now they're actually some of the most unhealthy Japanese there are because they have like crazy amount of pork consumption and they eat like barbecue like all the time. They're actually quite
Yeah, but
known
they
for that now.
also
They're
no, whoa, whoa,
incredibly
whoa, whoa.
unhealthy now.
Yeah, but they also drink Coca-Cola. They also eat potato chips. They also eat a whole bunch of crap that they didn't used to eat. So why are you blaming meat? I don't understand that. And this is what I want to know. I want to know how vegans made this logical jump from blaming modern disease, right? Because all these cancers, heart disease, that's all very much a modern disease. How are they blaming a modern disease on an ancient food? I would like to hear the mental
Yeah,
gymnastics in
it's not
explaining
mental
that.
gymnastics. It's actually quite simple. You can just go into any like culture and see that as soon as their meat consumption, their animal product consumption goes up, they start developing these diseases. If you look at like Africa from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, they have quite good records of this. They know what people are eating. And those same people, when they move into Western diets and they up their animal product consumption, they develop these diseases. You can see hypertension rates in in African countries just going up and up with their animal product consumption. Now you can say, okay, well, it's the other stuff, the vegetable oils and whatever. I would agree with you. Vegetable oils are certainly not good for you. I try to consume as little of those as possible. But it's definitely tied to the animal product consumption, and I can give you kind of just a very basic thing of how that's easily determined. Basically, if you look at any increased intake of saturated fat and dietary cholesterol, it will move your blood serum cholesterol up. And I know a lot of people who are kind of like anti-vegans, especially like in the carnivore, diet crowd or whatever, keto crowd. They will always say that there's no correlation between your dietary intake of saturated fat and cholesterol and your blood serum cholesterol. In fact, you put this as a comment on one of the videos that I had. And the fact is this: you cannot show me any study that is not a what do you call it? A cross-sectional observational study that doesn't show this. If you take anybody, you can do this yourself. You can check your cholesterol right now, where you're eating a lot of meat and organ meats and animal products and whatever, and dairy, eggs, etc. You can find out what your cholesterol is. Go on a whole food plant-based diet for like even probably just a couple months is enough. Like maybe 1 or 2 months is probably enough to go see a huge drop in your blood serum cholesterol. Start increasing the amount of saturated fat and cholesterol you consume. Your cholesterol is going to go up. This is like
So
it's
you
not
just
debatable.
so you just made an argument from ignorance while saying that it's not debatable. So that's a fallacy. Just because you can't show studies, I'm not arguing.
No, I can show studies. It's not from ignorance.
No, but you
There's
just
tons
said
and
that you
tons of
can't.
studies.
But what did you just say? You just told me that I can't show you any studies that don't show some. Didn't you
Okay,
just say that?
so let me rephrase that. There are like a plethora of studies that are controlled dietary experiments. So these are like ward studies where they take people in, they do the measurements, they feed them a controlled diet. It's not a questionnaire. You're not asking people, what did you have last week? You're controlling it. You're looking at it. All of these studies going back 40, 50, 60 years have shown that there is a direct correlation between the amount of saturated fat and dietary cholesterol that you consume and your blood serum cholesterol level. The reason why there's confusion and the reason why this isn't just generally accepted by everyone is that the animal agriculture industry specifically pay for studies that try to show the opposite. And what they do is they make these studies that they have known for, like I said, 50,
Do
60
you
years.
have evidence of this claim? Evidence of this claim, or is it just a conspiracy theory?
Sorry, you roboted out at the beginning. I couldn't hear your question. Can you say it again?
You have evidence of this
Yeah,
in
yeah.
industry?
There, yeah. There's oh shoot, I can't remember the guy's name. Uh, the Hexstat, Dr. Hexstat. He actually came up with this theory. There's the Hexstat equation where you can actually plot and predict the person's blood serum cholesterol level.
No, 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 no. What I'm saying is, do you have evidence? You just said that the meat industry corrupts the science, and I'm asking, do you have the evidence, or is that just
Yes.
your belief?
No, no,
There's
I can
evidence.
absolutely give you like examples of how and when they do this. So actually, not too long ago, Logan Blake and I did a live stream where we talked about cholesterol studies, and I went through examples. I can dig out the links and I'll post them in here or send them to you on email. You can read through them.
No,
But
but I'm
basically,
asking for evidence of corruption.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I did. I showed examples where there were studies that they have, they've been sponsored by the meat industry. So things like dairy industry or egg industry or whatever. The funding is clear. It's like listed in the in the
Funding.
study. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're
So
talking about funding. I'm asking for corruption.
I mean, okay. So you put the word corruption in my mouth. I mean, I didn't say
Well,
corruption. I'm saying that they're funded by these animal agriculture industries. That's what I said,
yeah,
and
but
they
that's not an
are.
argument. But that's not an
No, no,
argument
no.
against the
So
validity of the
it's
science.
not. It's not, and I didn't say that. That's why it's. I didn't say
So
that.
why
That's
bring
why
it
it's
up?
invalid.
But that's why you
I
brought
brought
it
it
up
up. I
because
brought it
you
up
want
because a lot of
because you're implying that
yeah.
they're not legitimate. These studies aren't
Um,
legitimate.
they aren't legitimate. They are trying to show something
Why
that for
not?
50. I'll tell you why. If you just
Do
stop
you have
interrupting me.
okay?
If you stop interrupting me, I'll
And
tell you.
I would like to show me evidence of what they're trying to do. You're assuming a lot here. Just
Yeah.
because
No,
somebody pays
I'm
for
not
a
assuming
certain
anything.
study, that
Here's what's
doesn't.
yeah. Here's what's happening. For like I said, when Dr. Hexstat came up with these equations and they proved them in metabolic ward studies where they had controlled feeding experiments, this has been repeated like 400 or 500 times over. Like it's not even debatable. And the reason why people don't believe this is because of studies that are constantly being brought out. They bring out like these new studies every year or so where they will try to show that this is not the case. But what they do is they try to show it via a cross sectional observation study. And the way that works is if you look at a population of people and you look at, like, let's say you and me, like we could be same height, same weight, whatever, but like let's say you're genetically more lucky than I am. You can have the same amount of saturated fat and dietary cholesterol, and your blood serum cholesterol might be a lot lower than me. So you might be at like a relatively good rate of like say 185 in the U.S. numbers, and I might be at 200. So when you look at cross-sectional observation and you just look at the amount of saturated fat and dietary cholesterol and you compare it to the blood serum cholesterol, you can't see a correlation. It's not going to be statistically significant because some people are just like genetically different and they can get away with eating more without having a much higher blood serum cholesterol. But they've known.
So what you're saying is that eating meat raises your blood serum cholesterol. That's what you're saying.
Eating meat raises your blood serum cholesterol. Yes, absolutely, it does.
Right. But so what?
So again, this is if you look at heart disease, atherosclerosis, the like only actual cause of atherosclerosis is a elevated blood serum cholesterol. So if
No,
you're
that's not true. That's not
it,
true.
it
There
is
is
according to William C. Roberts, who's been studying it for 50 years and has like hundreds of studies
no,
under
there
his
are.
belt.
Look, we could cherry pick studies all day. You could
No,
quote
no,
these
this isn't
studies. I
cherry
could.
picking. This isn't cherry picking. This is
So have
actually
you so have
verifiable.
you seen the studies? So have you seen the studies that say the exact opposite of?
Yes, I have.
Uh,
And this is what I'm saying. The only
but
ones that
those.
are the opposite are like ones where they try to use cross-sectional observation studies, which we know cannot show the difference.
So what you're saying is that your studies are credible. The ones that agree with you are credible, and the ones that disagree with you are not credible. Is that what you're saying?
No, no.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is that the ones that disagree with this viewpoint are cross-sectional observation studies, which cannot show this difference because of the genetic differences in people. So what I'm saying to you is look at the studies that I'll send you and then try to send me any kind of study that you want. I'll be happy to look at it. We can discuss it again, like live on another
But
session or what have you. And
let's suppose that eating
but let
meat
me
raises
finish.
your.
But let me finish. And
Well, I'm
what I'm saying
conceding.
is,
I'm conceding. Look,
what you will find is that the only types of studies that you will find that will support that argument that it doesn't matter and that it won't raise your blood serum cholesterol are going to be ones that are either cross-sectional observation studies, or they're going to be ones that are done on extremely unhealthy people who already have like really high blood serum cholesterol to begin with, because there is a tapering off. So like if you're already eating a really like high animal product diet, your blood serum cholesterol level is already going to be really high. And if you eat more saturated fat cholesterol, it won't raise it anymore. But if you ate less, it would drop. But there is kind of this
yeah,
like
right.
top level
Okay.
kind
No,
of
I
thing.
understand what you're saying. What you're saying is that according to the studies that you support, um, blood serum cholesterol levels are raised by eating animal products. They found a correlation. I mean, I haven't looked at these studies, so feel free to post them in the comments. And if I have the time, if I feel like it, I'll look them over. I don't see why this is relevant, because just because you have a raised blood serum cholesterol level, that still doesn't mean you're going to die from a heart attack. I understand that there are epidemiological studies that found a correlation between raised cholesterol level and heart attacks, but that doesn't mean that just because there's a correlation, that doesn't mean there's a causation. And there's actually studies that show that it's sugar will cause um, atherosclerosis in carnivore animals. But I'm not even trying to talk about studies, because look, this is the problem with quoting studies. You're not a scientist. I'm not a scientist. Neither one of us is qualified to do a complete comprehensive review of all the studies in the world and be able to draw good enough scientifically valid conclusions, because you have your bias, I have my bias. Neither one of us is really qualified to understand the studies, and you have not, I'm sure you have not taken the time to look into the science that disagrees with you, and that's because of your confirmation bias.
No,
And the
that's
reason why I
absolutely not
don't,
true. That's absolutely not
and
true. I've
okay,
looked into
okay,
both
fine,
sides because
okay,
again, when we started the discussion, I told you I was coming at veganism as like trying to like discredit it. I thought it was
okay. No,
absolutely unhealthy. I looked through
let
all
me
of that
finish
stuff.
though.
Believe me,
Yeah,
I do not
can
have
I
confirmation
finish? Can I
bias. I
finish my
looked through
point though?
all of that stuff because I was on the side of like you need to have animal products to be healthy.
Okay, I agree that this is what you believe. I reject that, and I would like to finish my point. Now, but also, just because there are no studies out there, and if you disagree, you could show them and put them up to the same standard of scrutiny that you put the pro-meat studies. But there are no studies out there that prove that elevated cholesterol levels kill people. They don't exist. Now, so
Sorry,
that's
I
the
just want to
logical
ask
leap.
you: have you seen the studies that show um, on they were done?
Correlation?
No, not correlation studies. I'm talking about autopsies that were done on young people, ranging from as young as 8, but up until like their 30s, and they were able to find that even as young as like 8 years old, you have the beginnings of heart disease already showing up in most people because the fatty streaks are already forming. And by the time a lot of people are in their 20s and 30s, they're already like pretty advanced, like plaques forming and all this kind of stuff. And in those autopsies, there's thousands upon thousands of these autopsies that show this. The single thing that like correlates to the formation of the plaques and the advancement of atherosclerosis is the elevated blood serum cholesterol level. This is not a
Oh, I'm
correlation.
sure. Just because there's a correlation, that doesn't mean there's a causation. So I don't want to go into these studies because I
But this is
haven't
not an
re
epidemiological, like,
yeah,
just looking at what people
but
ate.
you do.
This is looking
Okay,
at
can
the
I say
actual blood
something? Can I
cholesterol
say
level.
something, no? Could I say something? Just because this is a fact, this isn't my opinion, just because there's a correlation doesn't mean there's a causation, point blank, period. So there isn't enough, just because you found a correlation somewhere, that doesn't prove anything. Is it a good idea to study that further? Sure, and I hope that they do, but there's not a causation, so let's not confuse that. Another thing I wanted to say, because you did not answer my question, you went into this whole study thing, but I asked a very simple question. How does an ancient food cause modern disease? Please answer that.
I thought I did answer it, but I'll answer it again. The point is that people ate a lot less of it in the ancient days than they do now, and that's why it wasn't causing a problem. So I told you that,
Wait,
for
you're
example.
saying people ate less meat in the past?
Yes, absolutely,
No,
absolutely.
that's not true.
Um,
No, that's not true. This is no,
I
this is
can
not.
tell
No,
you
no,
right
no, no.
I can tell you right now. I talked to my parents. I talked to my grandparents, and they will tell. Well, I can't talk to my grandparents now because they're passed away, but I did when they were still alive, and I know what they ate, and they ate a whole lot less animal products than they do now. And the reason
Okay, well
being is
that's
that,
anecdotal.
oh well,
Okay,
I mean,
that's anecdotal.
again,
Hold on. No,
it's
no,
like
no.
you asked
What
me
I'm
how I
talking
know.
about,
No, I mean, I
your
gave you an
parents,
anecdote to support
you're
what
not
I said.
answering.
My
No, you're
point
not.
is
No,
that
you didn't.
people ate
You
less
didn't though.
animal products in the past than they do now, and
No,
they did.
look, listen to the question again and try to answer it because your grandparents aren't ancient. How does an ancient food cause modern disease? Your family, as far as you could think, as far as you know they existed, they're not ancient, they're recent. How does an ancient look, roughly 2.5 million years ago, our ancestors, before we were Homo sapiens, came down from the trees. This is accepted evolutionary theory. Maybe you reject it, I don't know, but this is what most science believes, right? This isn't controversial. 2.5 million years ago, these plant eaters, frugivores that still ate, they were omnivores, but they came down from the trees and they started hunting, scavenging, and their diet became primarily meat, at least in during the ice age for them, sure, because you couldn't grow anything. So it's a fact. This is a scientific fact that for the bulk of our evolutionary history, we ate animal products. I'm not saying we didn't eat any plants because there's evidence that we ate fermented plant matter out of the guts of, animals that we slaughtered. So I think maybe sauerkraut and stuff like that comes from these eating practices. But it is a well-known fact because no caveman ever painted picking fruit off the tree. We ate a primarily meat diet, and there's no evidence of. I mean, there's some heart disease. There was even signs of cancer. It did happen, but from what we understand, these modern diseases, which is why they're called modern diseases, did not exist at a point in our evolutionary history when we ate almost exclusively or to a very large degree meat. So, once again, I would like to know how you explain the fact that when we ate primarily meat, we didn't have any of these diseases that we do today, and no amount of like studies can explain this to me because it has to be bunk science. When we ate primarily meat, we were a lot healthier than we are today as far as these diseases, these specific diseases. I'm not saying that the average life expectancy was more than today, but that's for obvious reasons, such as infant mortality and just life being a lot more dangerous back then, getting
Yeah.
eaten
So
by a tiger or something. So how did, again, ancient food, meat, and animal products, how does this ancient food that we evolved to eat for 2.5 million years during the Ice Age, how does that ancient food cause modern disease? I don't understand that.
again, you're asserting a lot of things here without proof, and it's not nearly as like a consensus view as you make it out to be. There are a lot of people who think that the reason why people developed was not because of the hunting of animals and consuming of meat. What it was actually the cooking of like starch foods like potatoes and roots and things like that. But again,
No,
I
I
don't
didn't
want to
say
argue
that.
about that.
That's a
I
strawman
don't want to
argument.
argue
I
about
didn't
that,
say
but
that. So let me
also
clarify.
the ice age
Let me
was
just
not
clarify,
the ice age didn't
pal.
cover the whole
Pal, you
earth.
misrepresented me. Hold on, you misrepresented me.
Go
So
ahead.
let me just. I did not say that our brains. I'm familiar with the theory, but what I'm saying is that we ate meat. This is incontrovertible. This is not controversial. This is accepted evidence. We ate primarily animal products for 2.5 million years in our evolution, and it's
Yeah,
not until roughly.
I take umbrage with the word primarily because that part is certainly not consensus view. I'm not saying we didn't eat meat.
Well,
We certainly did eat meat, but to say that we
so
primarily, I
there's
would
a
definitely
so
absolutely
there's a
argue with
small
that.
so there's a small minority of vegans who say that we were what eating what.
Well, we were eating meat for sure. I mean, I'm not saying we didn't eat meat or that people didn't eat meat, but to say that we
We ate a lot of meat.
primarily ate, well, I mean, to say that we ate primarily meat, that means like
So what did we
most
eat?
meat.
What did we
Well,
eat?
we ate mostly plants and we ate meat occasionally.
How did we eat plants in Northern Europe when all the way down to the let's say Iowa, the earth was covered with ice for most of that time. How
Look,
did people who lived?
here's the thing where why I said the thing about the evolving, because most people take this argument to be that the people who were there like either were there the whole time, or that they developed there, or they evolved there. You started off by saying that the people came down from the trees. Um, the people did not come down from the trees in the ice age in northern like cold climates. They moved there after they had already developed into humans, and humans being humans that they are, that they're really smart and they learn how to adapt to their environment. They're able to adapt to an environment that is not inherently suited for them, for their health. And if you look at the people who are living in the most extreme kind of cold climates today, the Inuit people and people in like northern areas where there is poor vegetation and is poor options for getting plant foods, they have some of the worst health out of like any of the indigenous people living traditional lifestyles ever. And
But that's because they started eating modern food, which is what you were
no,
saying
no,
about
that's
Okinawa.
that's not true.
Yes.
So no, that's absolutely not true. Even back way before any kind of modernization, there are mummies that are thousands of years old, both in Inuit and also in places like Egypt and in South America, that have been found
How old? How old?
thousands of years old.
I'm talking two and a
They
half
had,
million years here.
yeah, but so thousands of years ago, what do you think the problem was? There were no McDonald's, there were no vegetable oils, there were no.
Grain, agriculture.
Yeah, okay, well,
But that's
I
where it
mean,
came from, right? Egypt, isn't
so
it? Isn't it?
The Inuit that they found thousands of years ago that had advanced atherosclerotic plaques and heart disease, and they had osteoporosis. Those guys were because of grains. Come on.
So, well, I'm not saying that like there was no incidence of these diseases, but you do agree that these are modern problems, right?
They're modern problems because most people in the past didn't consume the amount of animal products that we consume nowadays.
How much, so what's the percentage of animal to
Well,
tubers, I guess,
in
because
my
we,
mind and in the research I've done, basically the more plant based you get, the healthier and the lower chances you have of that kind
so
of stuff.
so for the 2.5 million years of our evolution prior to the agricultural revolution, what's the percentage of meat that we ate, do you think?
Well, I don't know that, and I don't think anybody really knows that. But I still maintain that.
But you're saying it's less than what we eat today.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that it's less than what we ate today.
So you have some idea of how much they ate back then. So I'm asking you. I mean, this is what my problem. You're making a comparison, but you're not willing to give any numbers. So I'm wondering where
Well,
you
I
got
mean,
this,
you came up with primarily. So I mean, what is your
because
idea of a number?
what this is accepted theory of diet that we were
But again, it's not
omnivorous.
accepted because there's a lot of people who claim otherwise.
No, there's a small minority of animal rights activists and vegans who claim otherwise.
No, there's a lot of like anthropologists
So
and
what are
people
they
who are
saying?
studying all sorts
What
of
are they
stuff.
saying? What are
There's a
they
lot of
saying?
people who are maintaining that people ate primarily plants, and they have like
What
feces that are
plants?
fossilized feces that show that people were eating a crap ton of plants.
Okay, so there are no feces older than 50,000 years ago, none, okay, none, zero, that have been found to have any uh, plant material in them. Roughly 50,000 years ago, yeah, they found some feces with some plant material in it, but prior to that, they haven't found anything. So that's not true. Another thing is, if you're saying they were eating presumably tubers, right? Because there was nothing else really that before agriculture came that you could have really eaten except tubers, especially in during the ice age where the growing season was just on the equator. The growing season was maybe 6 months if you were lucky on the equator. So my question would be, if they ate all these
Sorry,
tubers,
wait.
right?
How do you figure that the growing season on the equator is 6 months?
During the ice age, because everything down to like Indiana, Iowa was just permafrost. You couldn't grow
No,
anything there.
that's not true. The ice age didn't cover all the Earth with ice, and that's
No,
just
I didn't
simply not
say
true.
I didn't say all the Earth. I said down to roughly like the Midwest of the United States,
Okay, and
most of Europe.
again, though, the ice age is not like we're kind of getting lost in the weeds here for a couple of reasons. One is that even if there were some kind of like evidence that that's what people ate, back then, which again is disputed, but even if that were the case, does that say that that's the best possible thing for people to be eating? Like, just because
Well, but my
you're being
question
forced
was,
to eat animals because there aren't plants around, and the fact that you can live off of it and not die immediately but get heart disease 30, 40, 50 years later, does that still mean that there couldn't be a better, healthier way to eat? uh, you know, that's the point.
okay, well, this whole like getting heart disease, you're just assuming that because there's no evidence for meat giving people heart disease back, more than, let's say, 10,000 years ago. That evidence just doesn't exist. So that's an assumption. Another thing is,
But again,
if
so
be-
10,000 years ago, though, what were the Inuit mummies that were found? Like, how did they get heart disease? You said from grains. They didn't have grains. The Inuit didn't have grains.
I don't know about the Inuit, so I can't speak on that. And I'm not saying that heart disease didn't at all happen. I mean, you know, people have got heart disease. If you think that we know exactly all the reasons for heart disease, come on. But what I'm saying is that if your contention, because you still haven't answered how an ancient food causes modern disease, whatever, I'm not saying that there was no heart disease whatsoever, but this is a well-known fact that all these diseases we have today are modern diseases that did not affect people more than 10,000 years ago, 20,000, not in the same numbers that they do today. We know this, okay? That's a fact. Another thing we know is that people ate primarily meat. Just because some people dispute it, I'm asking, where's the evidence for that? Because there hasn't been any plant matter
So
found
let me answer
in
your question,
humans.
because I've already
Only,
answered it, but I think you're just not really getting it. So let me try to say this another way. If you tried to drink like 3 drops of kerosene or gasoline or whatever, something poisonous, do you think it'll kill you? Probably not, right?
yeah,
Like 3 drops
eventually it
isn't going
will,
to be
yeah.
enough. All right. But if you drank like a liter of it or a gallon of it, it would probably kill you. So this is the way I look at like cholesterol and saturated fat intake. They are harmful, but they take a long time to build up, and
There's no
you have to have a
science to
lot of
prove
them.
that.
Well, there is.
Okay,
I've told you
let's
there's
just
thousands
agree.
of
No,
autopsies
no,
that
no.
show that
Let's
elevated
agree
blood
to
sugar. Well,
disagree there.
these are
Let's
logical
just agree
steps.
to this. No,
But you
no,
don't
no.
have no.
It,
Listen to me.
there's no
There are
science to prove
thousands
that.
of
There's a
autopsies that
correlation.
no. This is
Correlation.
listen to me.
Correlation.
Listen to me. Tell me at what point, like, you disagree with one of these things. There's thousands of autopsies that show that elevated blood serum cholesterol occurs in people who have like advanced, heart disease. Would you agree
So
with that?
this is a correl. So you're saying
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't know,
I'm
but you're saying
saying,
there's a
there's
correlation.
a correlation. Yeah. So
Can I respond? Yeah,
well,
it's a correlation.
okay, great.
Yeah.
So we're that's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. There's a correlation that elevated blood serum cholesterol there is correlated with heart disease. Okay, and that's proven in like I said again, thousands upon thousands of autopsies on young people from 8 years old up to like 30 something years old. Okay, so that's a correlation. Here's something that's not a correlation. It's an actual thing. Or sorry, I guess it is a correlation. So let me say it again. Yeah, so that's a correlation. Here's another correlation. You can raise your blood serum cholesterol level by consuming increased amounts of saturated fat and cholesterol. And again, you don't need to study. You can do this yourself. Get a blood tester, check yourself, see how much saturated fat and cholesterol you're consuming. Decrease it, your blood serum cholesterol level is going to go down for sure. Okay.
Right. So you found two correlations,
Okay.
and
So there's
that's
two correlations. Okay, good. So there's
so
those two correlations there, and again, the logical jump that I'm saying is that if you know that eating animal products raises your blood serum cholesterol, and you know that it's like correlated to having more heart disease, and they do control for other risk factors. They do control for things like exercise and smoking and drinking and all these other kinds of things. And there's still that correlation that is there even for those other controlled factors. Why wouldn't you think that oh, maybe it's not a good idea to have an elevated blood serum cholesterol
right.
level?
And the reason why I don't, and I already answered this, and I think we should move on from this because we're just going in circles, is that I don't understand how an ancient food causes modern disease, which is why I question the correlation, which in and of itself isn't proof anyway. And there are other studies which you reject that reject what you said. And I'm not educated enough on these studies to really, nor do I care because it's really irrelevant, because that still does not answer how an ancient food causes modern disease. And to answer your question of us eating, having no choice to eat that food, well, yeah, that is a fact. We had to evolve from being primarily plant eating, proto-humans to Homo sapiens that was primarily eating meat. This isn't
Yeah, but
controversial at all. Just because,
that evolution
let me
didn't
finish.
happen during the
Let
Ice
me
Age.
finish. Hold
That
on.
evolution
Let
didn't
me
happen
finish.
during the Ice Age. It
Let me
happened many,
finish.
many, many years before that.
Let me finish. Just because there are some people who disagree with that for political reasons, I don't care. It's a fact that we were at throughout the majority of our evolution, 2.5 million years, we were heavily, heavily carnivorous. I'm not saying 100% because there were times where we did dig up tubers, even though they didn't find any evidence of this prior to 50,000 years ago. There's very little evidence for that. We did process some grain 100,000 years ago or so, but there's no evidence that we actually ate it. Maybe we used it to like paint walls or something. I don't know. Anyway, the point is this. The point is this. We used, you could actually do that. Don't laugh. It's true. Anyway, the point is this. We evolved to eat meat. This isn't controversial at all. And I still don't understand how I'm supposed to buy this idea that ancient food is causing modern disease. In my opinion, there are a lot of different factors that cause these modern diseases. And I think meat could be the problem, but not insofar as it's the meat itself, but it's actually the fact that we put all these chemicals, antibiotics, and all this other stuff in the meat. So even if you find a correlation between, this is what people don't seem to understand. Even if you find a correlation and they control for all these factors, it's not like they take, people who were born and raised eating nothing but animal products or primarily animal products. And it's not like we're studying those people. It's not like we're really studying vegetarians. I mean, vegans, people that were born and raised eating a vegan diet. We don't have these studies. So the science is so confusing. It's so politically motivated. I agree with you that there are industries that support, like the meat industry pays for certain studies, and there's probably, even though we can't prove it, there's probably corruption going on. I agree with that. They have a vested interest in meat selling, but you could say the same about the corn industry and everybody else. This is why I don't find it instructive or even worthwhile to get into all these studies. But if that's what you believe, then that's fine. But there isn't proof. There's some evidence that's on your side. There's some evidence that's on my side, but there is no proof. This is all very controversial. I think we could agree on that. And maybe ultimately what it comes down to is that different people do differently on different diets. And there's tons of evidence for that. So I'm not against veganism in general. I'm against veganism for me, for my family, for other people who don't want to be vegan. That's the problem I have. And there isn't, because it's such a great ask of humanity to change their entire diet, uh, that veganism, capital V, veganism makes. And there isn't enough evidence to prove, not suggest, prove that the vegan diet is the diet for everybody out there. The veganism doesn't have any logical basis to stand on. Now, it might
Okay.
be good for you. It might be good
Yeah,
for
let me
somebody
let me
else.
respond to a few things here. So one thing is, if you look at like smoking, like um, for decades before it was actually like publicly accepted and kind of like by the time like government got around to actually like the Surgeon General like actually made a warning to people telling them that like, look, there's a very strong correlation between like smoking cigarettes and getting lung cancer. People knew that stuff for decades going back. There were like hundreds and hundreds of studies showing the strong correlation and trying to get people to not smoke because it like likely causes lung cancer. It took decades before like the government finally like said like yeah there is like good enough evidence like we should warn people to not do it. It's kind of the same thing now with like meat and animal product consumption. There's more and more just like evidence that is showing these like very strong correlations, and in some cases like like reversal of
No,
these
there isn't.
diseases.
No,
Yeah,
there
there
isn't.
is.
There
There is.
isn't.
There's
Are
there's
these okay? Let
there's
me
an
ask you a
increasing
question.
body
Let me ask you a
of evidence.
question.
There's
Let
more
no,
and
there
more
isn't. Let me ask you a question.
there's more
Let
and
me
more
ask you a question. No, there isn't. Question.
How can you say there isn't when
Well,
just
let me
about
ask you a
every
question. You'll
day there's
understand.
like a new
Let me just.
study done that shows like
No, there
that to
isn't.
be the
No,
case?
there isn't.
Okay,
Listen,
go ahead.
listen. Are these people eating are these people eating grass-fed meat without antibiotics, without any bullshit in it, from healthy animals? Is that the kind of meat that they're eating? And are they not eating plants at the same time? Is these the kind of studies that you're talking about?
Look, there were studies done on the Maasai tribe in the 70s. Okay, they were like
I'm not
very
Maasai. I'm
much.
not Maasai. I'm
Yeah,
not
okay.
Maasai.
You asked if there were studies. I'm telling you that there are studies that showed even on people like that who ate primarily dairy, blood, and meat, and they had atherosclerosis. Like they had people that were like in their
But they
30s and
but they
40s.
ate other things too, didn't they? They ate other things as well, didn't they?
They eat
Sugar.
primarily. They ate
But
primarily
they
like
ate
blood.
sugar too, didn't they?
No, no.
What else did they eat besides? What did they
Very
eat? Did they eat
very little
exclusively meat?
very little vegetables. They ate mostly they're a pastoral tribe. They have cattle. They bring them around. They're all pasture fed because these are like very traditional like people in Africa. They have like cows that they're bringing around. What they do is they bleed the cows. Sometimes they don't actually kill
I
them.
know
They
what they
just
do.
yeah. So they are eating primarily the blood, the dairy, and then occasionally they'll kill an animal and eat the meat. That's their like primary diet.
And they sometimes get sick. So
No, not sometimes get sick. They
all
did
of them are sick.
studies. No,
Are all of them sick?
what I'm telling you is that there's a study. I can link it to you. You can read it, and they had in people that were as young as like 40 years old that they had atherosclerosis as bad as like old U.S. men, and these people were
What else?
exceptionally fit. They were like really active. They're like constantly walking around and like following their animals like through the pasture lands and all this kind of stuff, and they still have atherosclerosis.
But they also eat other things. They don't eat just meat, do they?
Again, they ate primarily the
But they,
dairy, the blood, and the
yeah,
meat.
but they eat other things
Yeah, they
also,
eat some
don't they?
vegetables. So you think the other
Right.
vegetables are causing the
I don't
atherosclerosis?
know. I'm not gonna make this claim because I don't know. You're the
Okay.
one making these
Okay.
claims
Look,
based on bunk science.
no, that's not bunk science. And look, here's you said there's no like studies. There are constantly studies. Just like go and like read some of the stuff. I mean, you look at like the World Health Organization telling people that
So what percent?
processed meat.
No, 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 no,
Here's the
no.
thing: processed meat
That's an
causes
argument. But that's
cancer.
an argument.
That's not
That's
even.
an
It's an
but
argument
that's an
against cancer.
argument from authority. Come
Yeah.
on, that's argument
No,
from authority.
it's
Come on,
no,
no, no, no.
it's no. You said there's
World
no
Health or
studies. No, no, no. I'm not saying believe
process.
them
Hold
because
on,
they're the World Health Organization. And
pal. You're being dishonest right now. Hold on 1 second. You're
here's the
saying
thing: they've
processed meat.
labeled
I just
processed meat.
hold on.
So
Let me
you
finish.
would agree
Let
that
me finish, pal,
processed meat is bad for you.
pal. Let me finish. I asked you for healthy meat from healthy animals, not stuff with nitrates in it, not stuff with chemicals in it. You're not being honest right now.
I
I
gave you
would
the
like you to
Messiah.
be honest.
I gave you the Messiah.
Processed meat is crap.
No, that's
But
not
they did
processed
not
meat.
eat.
The Messiah
Okay,
don't
but
eat processed meat. The
what I
Messiah didn't
asked,
eat
hold
processed
on,
meat.
let
I
me
gave you that
finish.
example and you didn't like it. So then I went
Wrong.
to something else.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I didn't your example. You're gonna have to let me finish my points and please address my points correctly. What I'm saying is that I want you to show me a population, preferably of Northern Europeans, not some African tribe that probably had that where the ground wasn't covered with ice for, you know, eons and eons, preferably Northern Europeans or whatever, people that ate healthy meat from healthy animals and they didn't eat any, if you want to say you have a controlled study here, none of this plant matter ever. Show me rates of disease, if or atherosclerosis or whatever disease you have a problem with, show me that in those people, and then you can say without the shadow of a doubt that it's not the plants causing it. You still could necessarily, you'd have to show some kind of mechanistic process by which, or some kind of biochemical process by which this actually happens. But until you have a study that studies that sort of population, not people that ate some plants and
Okay,
mostly
so you
meat,
want Northern European.
healthy.
Look, I'll give you an example. I have to look it up because I don't remember if it was Norway or Finland or something. I think it was Norway. you look at the death rate. This was in the movie Forks Over Knives. There's this like part where they're talking about death rate from heart disease in this country before like World War II. It was like on the rise. They had like just ever increasing number of people dying from heart disease. When the Germans, or was it? Yeah, I think it was the Germans. Yeah, the Germans came in and they basically took over. They confiscated all the animals for the most part from all the farms because they were using it to feed their own troops. And during the years of the occupation, during the war, their heart disease rates plummeted. They were eating they were forced to basically eat mostly plants because all of their farm animals got confiscated. Their heart rates like plummeted. Sorry, not heart rates. Their heart disease death rates plummeted. As soon as the World War was over, they got all their animals back. They got their like economy rebuilt. The heart attack and heart disease rates, death rates shot right back up, and they kept going up. That's one example. That's Northern Europe. Another example is, and I think this one is Finland. I'll look it up. I'll send you the link. In the 1970s, they had the highest death rate from heart disease in the whole entire world. They were the worst in the entire world. They went and they asked the top leading scientists of the day, the doctors of the day, to say, what can we do to help reduce this rate? There's too many people dying.
So I found the study you were quoting.
Yeah, okay.
I found it, the atherosclerosis in the Maasai. So they studied the hearts and aorta of 50 Maasai men. 50.
Yeah, great. So you don't like my example. I'm giving you.
Hold on. Let me finish.
This is pretty fun.
These pastoral people are exceptionally active and fit, and they consume diets of milk and meat. The intake of animal fats exceeds that of American men. Measurements of the aorta showed extensive atherosclerosis with lipid infiltration and fibrous changes, but very few complicated lesions. The coronary arteries showed initial thickening by atherosclerosis, which equaled that of old US men. The Maasai vessels, this is very important, enlarged with age to more than compensate for this disease. So while it's called a disease, it didn't cause them any problems because their vessels enlarged for this disease. So this is what I have to say. Look, you can sit there and cherry pick evidence from various studies, but when you actually take the time to read them unbiasedly, your whole theory falls apart. They didn't die because of this.
No, they didn't live long enough to die from it. They died from other things because, you said, they're living in a harsh environment. They're living.
But how did you just ignore what I just said?
They have the disease. They have the disease. The fact that they're not dying from it is because they're exceptionally physically fit and active,
that's not
and
why.
It protects them somewhat, and they have like a compensation for it. But that doesn't mean they don't have the disease, and it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be healthier if they didn't have that disease.
That's not true. The coronary arteries.
You're just asserting that. How would you say that?
No, I'm reading from the study. Hold on. I'm reading from the study. You misrepresented the study. You made a logical leap. Yes, you did.
They have atherosclerosis equal to that of old U.S. men. That's what it says.
Yeah, but nowhere in the study does it say. It actually tells you specifically that this. Wait, where was this? Hold on a second. Very few complicated lesions, and it also states that their arteries enlarged to alleviate this problem. So it wasn't a problem. Yes, we consider that a disease by our standards, but in their population, their arteries, because it's, atherosclerosis clogs up your arteries, blah, blah, blah. That's the problem, right? They had fat. Because they ate a lot of fat, they had fat in their arteries. But their bodies compensated for it by enlarging the arteries. So it wasn't a problem, and it doesn't apply. So you misrepresented the study.
I didn't misrepresent the study.
Listen, you did.
Listen, I didn't misrepresent the study. And like I said, I gave you wanted a Northern European. I gave you one. I'm in the middle of giving you the second one. The Finnish people, they instituted changes. Look, they got people.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
And they cut down their death by
Hold on a second. I'm not interested in your studies anymore because look, you can make your videos and you can talk about these studies. I think we need to move on because you misrepresented them, Masai, and I don't have the time to go and read these studies because it looks to me like you have a bias and you're not telling the whole story because you didn't tell me that they didn't die from this. That's a fact. You just assume that they would have died at later on because I don't know why. But you assume this. The study doesn't say exactly what you said. You
No,
embellished it to
you're
you
putting words
did.
in my mouth. I did not say whether they died from anything. You said, "Show
You
me a
said they were
Bible
going to
of
die.
people who are
You
eating
didn't you say,
pasture-fed
pal, didn't you
animals
say,
who are
pal,
getting heart disease."
pal,
And
pal,
I gave
let
you
me
one,
address
and they did
let
have
me
heart
address your
disease.
point. Can I address your point? You said no, I didn't. You misrepresenting what I'm saying. I'm trying to be as faithful to what you're saying, and I'm showing how you omit certain things from this. This is important information. It tells you, do you deny the fact that it says in the study that these weren't complications, that even though they had fat in their arteries, it wasn't a problem because the arteries adjusted and they grew bigger, right? This is right. I'm reading the abstract of the study. You didn't tell me this. The reason, do you deny the fact that the reason why we see atherosclerosis as a problem is because it clogs up your arteries and then you get a heart attack from that? But clearly, this wasn't the problem with these people because their arteries adjusted for this. So
You
you
could still
didn't
have
represent
problems,
the study.
even if they're not
You
considered,
could,
because
you could, but these people didn't.
those lesions are there, and they did have those, and those can break off from the artery wall, and they can go to other places, and they can cause stroke. They can cause all sorts of other problems.
But
They
that
can
didn't
go to
happen.
places where,
But that didn't happen. It could. You say, okay, you're saying it could happen. I agree with you, but it didn't. So you
yeah,
can't use this
because they
study.
examined live people. That's why. I mean, like
Yeah, but
you asked,
did you
you
not
said
omit?
no. Listen, the whole reason the Maasai topic got brought up was because you said that the people who are eating these traditional pasture-fed animals, et cetera, that they would not be getting heart disease. And yes, they do. They do get heart disease.
Well, this is what I said. We call it heart disease, right? Because it creates problems in people whose arteries don't adjust for this fat, the
Okay,
cholesterol deposit
let's
in the lipid deposit in the right. Isn't that the reason?
listen. I think we're really just we're like you're here, I'm here, and we're just not going to see eye to eye in this.
Well, but you didn't. But this is a
The
fact,
viewer
pal.
of
This
this
is a
debate
fact.
can make up
Yeah,
their
I
own
know.
mind, but like
But I just want to
really
state.
just
I
you
just want to
asked for an
state this fact
example
that
where
you.
somebody who's eating a pasture
But
fed
pal,
animal.
you omitted important parts of the study.
I
Very
gave you an
important parts.
example from memory. I don't have it in front of me. You're the one who brought it up
Okay,
in
that's
front of you,
fine.
and
That's fine. Okay, I'm not.
you're trying to paint it as if I was trying to like do a live omission.
Okay,
I didn't tell
look,
you
I'm
anything. You
sorry.
asked for a group of
Look,
people who are eating
okay,
pasture fed
let me
animals
explain
who would
then.
still get
Fair
heart
enough.
disease.
Let
And
me
I gave you
explain.
the example from
Let me
memory.
explain. Okay, let me explain then. I attributed intent to you that wasn't there. Okay, fine. You didn't do this on purpose. I have no problem with that. What I am saying is that you did not represent the study in accurately because there are two very important parts that you missed out that I pointed out. And I'm afraid because I haven't seen all these studies that you're quoting that there's a lot of things that you're going to omit because we all have like I said before, we have a confirmation bias and we look for stuff to support that. So right here I would like to move on from looking at these studies because I haven't looked at them.
Yeah,
And if I actually
that's
take
fine.
the time to
I'm
look at
fine with
them,
that.
I'm going to find some problems in them. And
I'm happy to
I'm not
discuss
saying you
them with
did
you.
it
So let's do that.
intentionally.
Let's do that in another time then, and we can. I'll send you some stuff to look at. You can send me whatever you want to look at. I'll look at it, and we can discuss it again. That's
No
totally
problem.
fine.
No
I'd be
problem.
happy to do that. So yeah, and I mean, we've been talking for quite a while here. Let's just try to kind of finish up here. I would want to just move on from this point to my kind of like ultimate point, which I think is really just kind of the crux of veganism, which is that it's an ethical argument that if you can avoid the needless suffering and death of an animal, then you should avoid it. That's the that's the gist of veganism. So I don't know if you want to say something about that or how you view that, but would you agree with
Well,
that that's okay? Or
yeah. Given if all these assumptions and presuppositions are correct, right? If indeed you can do that, and indeed it is needless, then yeah, I think people should move on from eating animals. However, that hasn't been proved. That's the problem. And there's tons of evidence out there that says, and I'm a prime example of that. When unless I eat animal products, I get sick. I get weak. I don't feel good. I have, gastrointestinal problems. Like I don't deal very well on. I tried vegetarianism for a while and I wasn't happy at all. I didn't even go full vegan, but I wasn't happy. And when I actually eat meat, I'm like Superman. Like it feels great. Everything is just better. So, if some people can be that way, then I support that. But it's been proved that a lot of people don't do well on the vegan diet. There are thousands and thousands of testimonials, and so it's like, well, if you can, fine, then I agree with you. But I don't think everybody can. That's the problem. I know I can't.
But you said you haven't even tried it. You said you tried vegetarianism. That's not exactly the same thing, and there could be other problems. You may not have been getting enough calories. You may have been, just eating a poor diet. I don't know, and that's not my place to
No, I
to
was
tell
eating
you.
well. I was eating well. I was eating fine. I was eating eggs. I was eating dairy. I was eating, when I took the meat out, I was weak. I didn't have the same type of energy. I had mental fog. And there was like a whole bunch of different problems. And I was taking supplements. I was drinking protein shakes with like vitamins in them and all this other stuff. And it just didn't feel right. Once I cut out all the vegetables, all the fruit, all the sugars, everything, like it's like night and day. I can't even, and now if I try to eat, like I could do fine on sauerkraut or like really well cooked carrots and few things I do fine on, but certain things like grain or beans or any of that stuff, I mean that stuff is toxic to my system. Like maybe you do okay on that, but it's like night and day. Like you don't even understand. And I'm not saying it's like that for everybody, but for me, this is the way to be. I can't even imagine going back to eating plants and feeling like shit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for this, I would just say this. If everybody, if I understand it right, I mean, from watching your videos, you're close to like fully self sufficient, like on your farm. You're growing all your own food, and you're pretty much consuming mostly your animals or the animals of your neighbors who you're trading with.
Yeah,
Is that a
we
correct
still
kind
bring
of?
we still bring in feed, like you bring in, wood chips. We're still adding biomass, but
Mhm.
eventually we're going to get to a point where, yeah, we're 100% self-sufficient. We're not quite there, but I don't buy meat, and if I do, it's like from my neighbor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, here's what I would say. If everyone in the world did that, um, we most likely wouldn't be having this discussion. I don't think there would be really like um, the problems that we have, like from environmental destruction, the problems for health. Um, the, I just think like the world would be really a completely different place. The fact is that most people in the world, the number of people we have in the world, would not be able to do kind of what you're doing. I applaud you kind of in the sense of what you're doing, because I think if everybody did grow their own food, like a lot of these problems just wouldn't be there. Um, now
Let me
there's
just interject for one
yeah, go
second.
ahead.
I think it's possible. I think it's possible to do this. Most people don't want to. I think it's very possible. This planet is enormous. There's plenty of space to do what I do for most people. They just don't want to. That's the problem.
Again, I don't know how much land you have. I don't know how many animals you keep. That's not really my point. My point is this: there are more and more people who are discovering health benefits from adopting a whole food plant based diet specifically, and I use that separate from vegan diet, because you could eat like potato chips and beer, and that could be vegan, but it's certainly not going to be healthy for you. So I would say whole food plant based diet is definitely the way to go if you're concerned about your health. From an ethical standpoint, if you're eating potato chips and beer and you're not killing animals, like you're at least like not harming them, but you are probably harming yourself. So I mean, I wouldn't recommend that to somebody, but I wouldn't say that it's unethical. It's just like if you're going to drink or smoke and you're only harming yourself, it's kind of like your choice. You can do what you want. But my point is this: there are more and more people adopting it throughout the world. It is being proven day by day that it can be a healthy way to live, and in fact, it does reverse a lot of the modern diseases we have like heart disease, like cancer in some cases, and diabetes and a whole bunch of other things. So I think it will just kind of constantly keep growing. I think more and more people are going to adopt it, and there's going to be a gradual shift. And I think at some point, um, you know, there will come a time when people will look at the consumption of animal products as kind of this backwards, like old way of doing things that is just not good for you, and it's not good for the planet. It's not good for the animals.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think people are going to get sick. A lot of people are going to get very sick eating the vegan diet just as they are right now. And big pharma is going to step in as they are right now, like Goji Man giving vegetable police advice on how to, be better, even though he's already tried the vegan diet for 10 years. I think some people are going to do just fine with proper supplementation and taking other precautions like eating, just being healthy overall. I think some people are going to do fine, but I think a lot of people are going to get very sick and live miserable lives, and they're not going to do well at all on the vegan diet because there are tons of them who aren't. People who do it right and they still get very sick. So I think some people will be okay, but I think a lot of people won't. And this is the problem. There is no, in my opinion, and I think this is backed by science, there is no one size fits all diet for this entire world. And definitely veganism isn't it, because if it were, we would have eventually we would have seen some kind of population somewhere being completely vegan, and we haven't. And the only way to prove that the vegan diet is a viable diet for us as a species is to have a controlled study with hundreds of thousands of people from different races over 4 to 7 generations, because that's the only way you could truly and honestly prove that this is the right diet for us. And until that's done, um, you can't make that assertion. I know a lot of people will, but you need intergenerational studies because it's a fact. We know this. There are genetic mutations that happen to people who eat a primarily uh, plant-based diet, and these mutations worsen and they show up later on down the line, and people develop. There's actually a study out there, maybe I'll link it for you, that shows that people who have historically eaten a plant-based diet have a higher risk of heart disease. So I think it'll work for some people, but I don't think it's going to work for everybody because we're not the same, and that's just the problem.
Yeah, I'm happy to look at any studies, and like I said, we can do another session some other time. So definitely send me stuff.
That
I'll
sounds
I'll
good.
send you some things, and then we can continue the discussion. But thanks for your time. I do appreciate it, and I hope it was enjoyable for people. I think there was a lot of kind of going back and forth in the chat as well. I didn't have a chance to really follow too much of kind of what people were saying, but I'll try and read through them after the fact. And I do appreciate everybody's time. So
Yeah,
thanks.
man.
And yeah, I've got your channel linked in the description as well. So if anybody wants to check out Carnival's channel, go check him out, and I'll have the link in there.
I just wanted to say thank you as well. And I know we got heated, but this is the point of these debates. But I definitely enjoyed my time here, and I look forward to speaking with you again, man. So you're a cool
Cool.
dude, man. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Have a good one.
take it easy.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everybody.